I do have a new speaker this year, and I'm scanning for him, and I don't see him. He's not here yet. He's not on the schedule for tonight, thank goodness. That's Ted. He's here. Dan Sheridan is going to be joining us from the Chicago area. I've talked to him twice on the phone. Anybody ever heard of Dan Sheridan? This guy he's got a radio show now. He's really sound scripturally. I've talked to him on the phone 3 or 4 times. He has his really things straight with Paul's gospel, the difference between the two evangels. On the strength of that, just talking to him for a few hours, I invited him to be a speaker. So we're going to hear from him if he shows up. I'm sure he will. There's new things happening, and I want to talk about that just a little bit before I start on my talk for this evening. There's a new book out. It's called How to Be Free from Sin While Smoking a Cigarette. Now you can insert your own vice there. You don't have to be a smoker to benefit from this, which is kind of a funny thing to say, but God looks at us a certain way, doesn't he? He has an opinion of us. He tells us certain things that are true about us, such as you are free from sin. You are now free from guilt and condemnation. And so the stunning thing about our message and about this book is that you can be free from sin while, the key word, the really shocking word I think in the whole title is while smoking a cigarette, which is the opposite of what we hear in Orthodox theology. You have to don't sin, stop sinning, and then you can be free from sin. But the radical message is be free from sin while you're sinning. You're not hearing that very often anywhere, but that's the scriptural truth, and I get into that in that book. It's been a rough year for me personally. Working full-time in the evangel has its ups and downs. I'm going to be writing a letter pretty soon to everybody. I'm going to send it to all the subscribers and all my friends all over, telling them what's been happening. But God's really taken me through some low points, humiliating times financially, just discouragement, but that's the way God works, as we know. And it's really when you're in those low areas that you see clearly. And I was really in one of these low areas. In fact, I was so down that I quit this job. I decided that God, I poked my finger into God's chest and I said, "You've gone too far this time. That's it. I'm finished." And I was quite serious. In fact, I was driving into this town in March to get the want ads, and I saw the trucks going by, and you know what? I really want to be a truck driver. I mean, you think I'm kidding. I'm serious. I looked at these trucks and I lusted after them. I just want to go and drive and get paid for it and make so much money per mile. It just sounded so attractive to me to get out. I actually went online and looked at this truck driver. I had given it all up. It was a really, and my wife keeps telling me, "You're the only one who does what you can do. You can't quit, give it time." I said, "No, that's it. I can't take it anymore." Little did I know, during this crisis, my sister sent me a book in the mail called Miracle in the Andes. I don't know if you're familiar with it's a really famous airplane crash in 1972 of the rugby team, and they were stranded in the Andes for 72 days, and in order to survive, they had to feed off the flesh of the victims, a very celebrated case of survival. You've got to get this book, Miracle in the Andes. It'll change your life. The writer of the book is a first-person account. This story has already been written about in a book called Alive by Piers Paul Reed. That's the third-person account. This is a first-person account of this drama. And Nando Parado, who wrote the book, said he's the one that eventually had to walk out of the mountains because they had given up the rescue. And they were up there, freezing cold temperature, unbelievable survival tale. I mean, it rivals the Holocaust as far as a gut-wrenching tale of survival. And the only thing that got him through, he had a vision of his father. This man, his sister and his mother were on the plane. They both died. His mother died instantly. His sister died after 3 or 4 days in his arms. and he knew his father would be grieving. He loved his father so much, and he had this picture of his father in his mind, and his whole driving thing was getting to his father, getting to his father. Naturally, God drew for me a parallel there, the power of the mind. I had all kinds of tools laying around me in Scripture, verses I've read time and time again about girding up the apprehensions, renewing the mind, set your affection on things above. And all these tools, I wasn't using them. I wasn't making practical use of them. I'm stepping over them and kicking these tools out of the way. And God made it so real to me after reading this book that truly, each of us, but in my case, it's really, I feel it acutely, we work as unto the Lord. And our vision must be single. And Christ wants us to have a pureness toward Him. And man, that really hit home with me after this book was just God's timing for me. And I felt like I had been on that mountain, and I had walked out of the Andes with Nando Parado. And God gave me, just infused me. All of a sudden, it didn't matter anymore. I started giving things out, not charging for anything. I just wanted to touch people then. And I realized, I think I told you this before, I had kind of sequestered myself up in my office. I'm just going to write books. But I had this yearning desire to be with people, to see people. People have told me over the years, we want to know what's going on with you. And I felt it was an intrusion into my privacy. But now it's just like God's opened my heart like the Grinch. I don't know. I'm like a Grinch on Mount Crumpet. His heart grows 10 times, and he lifts up this sled. And so this summer, I'm going to hit the road. I haven't been on the road for 7 years, but I'm going to hit the road in July. I'm going to take 3 weeks and do a tour of the East. I haven't announced this yet. Actually, I'm announcing it now, but I'm going to see if anybody's interested in hosting me, whether they want to get together with 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 50. I want to go see people. There's groups of people. There's clusters all over the country. I want to do an Eastern tour in July and a Western tour in September. So I'm really looking forward to that. There's going to be new stuff on the internet where I got backed up on letters that are really instructive. I'm going to be putting those up. I got articles and essays, new photographs. I'm starting a newsletter that I have 8 issues backlogged. I got 8 issues ahead. I haven't launched it yet. Look for it. You're going to be getting a letter. You're going to be getting an email. It's called Clanging Gong News. Going to have photographs, lots of fun there. And the book, and just I'm excited now to finish this walk. I knew God told me I haven't finished what He's appointed me to do. There's still a war out there, and I feel like I left the trenches, but now I'm back, and I always thank you every time I'm here for. Believe me, any of the financial troubles I have isn't the fault of anybody here. It's just a tough time in the life, with the kids at the age they are, and it's just a blessing to see all your faces here and to realize that the body of Christ is a living, vital unit. Nothing can stop it. It exists. Joe, you always ask, where's the togetherness? Where's the unity? And I ask myself those questions too. But it's there. And this summer, I'm going to go connect with people. And I'm going to report back to you that there's thriving ecclesias. And if there's not any, I'm going to make some. And God is doing a work. 3 weeks ago, we had ants. This is the beginning of my talk, by the way. Yeah. I'm sorry to my wife. I apologize. She doesn't want me to confess this. But yeah, 3 weeks ago, we had ants. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, I forgot to tell you, we're doing a little different this year. We have this timer up here. This is like Jeopardy, right? I'm going to ask Rick a question, and then I'm going to hit the timer. He's got 10 seconds to answer. Not really. We're doing 30-minute speaking session. Mine hasn't started yet. Don't start the clock on me yet. That was my intro. Now, I see you're looking at your watch over here. I haven't started yet. We're going to do, we get more speakers in this way, and plus it cuts this, it makes it a little easier on you. 30-minute slots, followed by a 10-minute break, and then we have our usual breaks for supper. If you notice, I've turned the air conditioner off for the sound. I hope it's still comfortable in here. I opened the doors. Tomorrow's going to be a gorgeous day. Low 70s, going to be down to 50s tonight. It's going to cool off really nice. God's going to give us a fantastic weekend. Does anything shoot out of here if I go over my time? 3 weeks ago we had ants, sorry. It's all my fault because I leave food out. It's always the husband's fault, usually, but I do leave the food out. But ants are marvelous creatures. They really are. Have you ever really looked at them? They're ingenious. When you move the fruit, they scatter. They know they're in trouble. They're smart. They're little feelers, and you look at them real close, and they're shiny and they're intelligent. They're so intelligent that Scripture, King Solomon mentions the ant in Proverbs 6:6. Go to the ant, consider its ways, and be wise. Because the ant works and it stores, it carries things that are 10 times heavier than it, and it knows where the food is, it runs, it knows when it's in trouble. They just seem really smart to me. Mark Twain once said, I would compare the ant to humanity, but I'd be doing a disservice to the ant. So I marveled at these ants, and I really couldn't kill them. I just kind of got them because I have a reverence for all life. But it got to the point where they became quite a nuisance, and I decided I would harden myself. I would become as God. Does not God snuff out life every day? And so I became as a small g God, and I started to kill these. I went, I'm sorry. I would apologize to him. I'm sorry about that. That's really not me. I didn't want to do it. I'm sorry, really. Don't take it personally. It's not you. I'm not like this. But then there'd be so many of them that go, die, die, die. You get mad at them, so you start killing them like crazy. And I did feel like God. I mean, I had control over the life and death of these beings that have communities, that have brains, and it didn't not affect me. It did have an effect on me. Because, as I said, this made me think of God. God doesn't call us names when he snuffs us out, but God does take life, and you can't believe the rate at which he takes life. I don't know if any of you remember the song, Don't Fear the Reaper, Blue Oyster Cult, 1976. Anybody, Don't Fear the Reaper? Well, there's a line in there, 40,000 men and women every day. The Grim Reaper takes 40,000 men and women every day. Well, to adjust that from 1976 to now, it's 153,000 people every day. My mother died this year. On April 8th, she was in her house, in her chair, and she stopped breathing. And God took her that day. I dedicate this conference to her. I dedicate this conference to my mom. I dreamed about her 2 nights ago. I was in a car, and the window rolled down, and somebody approached the car, and it was her, and she looked like she did when she was 20. I've been going through old pictures of her, beautiful woman, age 20, and I just loved her. I couldn't believe it was her. I thought you were dead. I jumped out of the car and just kissed her because I missed her. And so I dedicate this conference to her, and it seems that life is cheap to God, but it's not. In fact, every being that God reaps, he's hoarding. He's hoarding. He's keeping it to himself. I want to go to John chapter 6 and read you a passage out of Scripture. After these things, Jesus came away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee of Tiberias. There were with him a vast throng. And he came to the mountain, and we know the story, there wasn't any food. I'm going to verse 8. One of his disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, is saying to him, there's a lad here who has 5 cakes of barley bread and 2 food fishes. But what are these for so many? Yet Jesus said, make the people lean back. Now there was much grass in the place. The people then leaned back, the men in number about 5,000. Jesus then took the bread, and giving thanks, he distributes it to those lying back. Likewise also the food fish, as much as they wanted. Now as they are filled, he is saying to his disciples, gather the superfluous fragments, lest some should perish. They gathered them then, and crammed 12 panniers with fragments of the 5 cakes of barley bread, which are superfluous, for those who were fed. The men then, perceiving the sign which Jesus does, says, truly this is the prophet who is coming into the world. Jesus Christ brought cake after cake after cake after cake after cake of bread, And fish after fish kept appearing out of the basket. And likewise, he is today, even now, bringing humanity into the world over and over and over again. 120 million people enter this wicked world every year. That's 4 per second. 4, 8. There's a mother right now birthing a baby. Now she's in labor. Now there's 4 more, there's 8, there's 12, there's 16. It's unbelievable. Can you believe that? It's incredible. 4 babies a second. There's 4 more. There's 4 more coming into the world. Like the loaves and the fishes. He produces and he keeps them coming. But he also reaps. 1.78 people die every second. There's 2, right? There's 2. Somebody's at a bedside, died. A funeral's arranged. Here comes a hearse. 2 more. There's been 107 people a minute. 3,000 people have died since I started talking to you. 3,000 people have died. Funerals, weeping, mourners, heart-wrenching. There goes 10 more. Unbelievable. You can't keep up with it. I'll answer that question afterwards, thank you. No, I didn't count the 4 ants. I don't even know how many ants are leaving this world every day. I couldn't find that stat on the internet. The thing that astounds me here is in John 6:10, the people then lean back. While Jesus is doing this, the people are leaned back. And he's doing this work of bringing. And really, for you and me, we can't account for it. You've already forgotten the statistic. You can't think about it. 2 people per second, it's just too much. I mean, you're already wondering, should I get coffee after this message? I wonder how mommy's going to be talking. Did we turn the air conditioner off at the room? You're already thinking about other things because you can't handle this. But God is actually monitoring every being he brings into this world and every being he reaps out of the world. He's actively involved. We can't handle it, but God can, and he does it while we're leaned back. Look at this part, John 6:12. Now, as they are filled, he is saying to his disciples, gather the superfluous fragments, whatever's left over, lest some should perish. Gather. He's not willing that any should perish. The Greek word perish, apolumai in the Greek, pass out of one's possession or beyond reach. He's not willing that any of that, even bread, should perish. It's not going to pass out of his reach. He's concerned for bread and fish. He's concerned for bread and fish. So you know he's concerned about the human element in all this. Now I'm going to be like Jesus. I'm going to go WWJD. Okay, I'm going to tell you a parable, but it's going to apply to this. Actually, it's not a parable because it's a true story. And I'm going to bring a point out here, obviously, because I usually do. My dad was alive. My dad died 3 years ago now. He flew small aircraft. He trained in a Cessna 150. I don't know if anybody here knows about small aircraft, but a Cessna 150 is a little plane in front. And he related this story to me. He said, I'll never get this. I was taxiing out to the runway. I was parked at the runway waiting my turn to take off. And I heard this huge noise behind me, this giant rumble. I looked back and I saw a nose wheel. There was a 747 parked right behind him ready to take off. And he said it was such a shock. He's used to his perspective there. He looks back and he sees a wheel that's as big as his airplane. And the Apostle Paul tells us that the fashion of this world is passing by. There is something huge coming that if we were to look behind us and see it, it would shock us. But the Scripture tells us there's some gigantic thing coming where God has stored up everything. You look behind you and you think your troubles are huge and monumental. You look behind you, you see the nose wheel of this gigantic thing that God is bringing to us. And it contains every spirit that ever existed. Yes, the spirit of the ants as well. People always asking me, I'm worried about my pets. Are my dogs and my cats going to get to heaven? Every spirit spirit, that every soul on the earth returns to God. He cares for the sparrow that falls. He's got this gigantic, wonderful thing coming on the horizon. And that is what I want to occupy our minds with tonight. 1 Corinthians 7, starting with verse 29, the Apostle Paul. Now this I am saying, brethren, the era is limited. Pay attention. The era is limited, and furthermore, those also having wives may be as not having them, and those lamenting as not lamenting, and those rejoicing as not rejoicing, and those buying as not retaining, and those using this world as not using it up. For the fashion of this world is passing by. It's like, picture my dad's little airplane there and a chain attached to it, and it's pulling this 747 if it could, and the small plane is going out of the picture, and this gigantic thing is coming. This current world system is passing by. I'm going to give you a second witness here. 1 John 2:8. The darkness is passing by. It's active. Something is happening right now as we're speaking. Not only are people being born and dying, but this era is now, as I'm speaking to you, passing by. John says the darkness is passing by and the true light is already appearing. And one of the greatest phrases I've ever heard that man has made up is, it came to pass. They start stories with, it came to pass. Well, good. I'm glad it came to pass, because if it came to stay, if death came to stay, if the graves came to stay, if the death of my mother and my father and all those I love, and those aunts included, if that comes to stay, we're miserable. But it came to pass. And the fashion of this world is passing by. The Greek word here is schema. It's a scheme, the prevailing form, the fashion of this world. And you know, it seems so big and so large. And I don't even care if you want to take the word fashion literally there, you can. For a while there, I got my wife a Vanity Fair magazine. You know, we just wanted to see how the other half lives. So we got Vanity Fair magazine, and you know, you see these gods and goddesses of the eon, and they highlight the fashion and the cars and the suits. And there's not one photo in that magazine where they don't tell you where the suit's from, where the dress is from. And you really, you know, you see these cover people and their hair's blowing back. I think people got fans on them. And wow, you're intimidated by this eon. And we make, what do we make gods out of this eon? Right now, our hometown team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, are in the NBA playoffs against the San Antonio Spurs. And our great star is LeBron James. The guy makes $5 million a second. He just made $5 million. There's $5 million more. For putting a ball in a hoop. This is a god of this eon who can put a leather ball through a hoop. Tiger Woods, I mean, I respect these people. I like sports. Tiger Woods knocking a little white ball. That's Tiger Woods knocking the white ball in the hole. $10 million. It's just unbelievable, the glory and the honor and fame. But it is small. I'm telling you, it's this very thing is passing by. And you want to be anticipating that big thing that's coming on the horizon. And that's what we want to do. God gave me this picture, but I feel we're on, this is the Titanic. We're on the Titanic, metaphorically speaking. Beautiful, luxurious vessel, the greatest of its kind. You can't sink it. God himself couldn't sink this ship. All of the gods of the eon were on the ship. And all it took was an iceberg. Folks, you don't want to be hanging on to the Titanic when it hits the iceberg. And this baby is heading for the ice. This current era, Paul says, is passing by. I want to go now to another place in 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 6. Paul speaking, yet wisdom are we speaking among the mature, yet a wisdom not of this eon, neither of the chief men of this eon, who are being discarded. You hear that? The chief men of this eon, who we envy, we want to be like, we want to make as much money as them. They are, as we are watching, being discarded. But we are speaking, we in this room, are of no account. No television cameras here. Wide World of Sports isn't here. ESPN, we're not being covered by any major networks. We are speaking God's wisdom in a secret. It's a secret wisdom that has been concealed from the gods of this eon. The people on the Titanic who think that this is the greatest vessel that ever hit the water, they don't know about this. And they don't know that the ship's going down. But we do. This is a secret which God has concealed. He designated before the eons for our glory. It's for our glory, and it's coming on. You look behind you, it's coming, I promise you, it's coming. For our glory, which not one of the chief men of this eon knows. For if they know, they would not crucify the Lord of glory. But according as it is written, that which I did not perceive. Remember I told you my dad looking back? He perceived that. When he looked back at his airplane and saw the nose wheel of that 747, he perceived something. That made his heart beat. That was a great thing to him. But look at this. What's coming to us? We have not even seen the hem of its garment. Eye did not perceive, ear did not hear, to which the heart of man did not ascend. In your wildest imagination, you have not imagined what is on the horizon that is coming on as this. It's like this is an old player, like Shakespeare wrote, an old player that struts his hour upon the stage and is seen no more. It's going off stage and God is coming in. And I want to be on his ship. And we are on his ship. And it's going to feel real good to be on that ship when this one goes down. To that which the heart of man did not ascend, whatever God makes ready for those who are loving him. That's us. Yet to us, God reveals them. He's revealing these things. That's why we're here, because even though these things were a secret, God is revealing them to us through his chosen messengers. God's revealing them through his Spirit, for the Spirit is searching all, even the depths of God. Wow. Now it's the exhortation time. I want to go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 29. I'm just going to read the first line there. Now, this I am averring, brethren, the era is limited. I looked up this word limited, and a curious thing happened. The Concordant Dictionary in the back says, see enshroud. See enshroud. E-N-S-H-R-O-U-D. So I went to enshroud, and I found that the Greek word was sunstello, and that the elements are together put. This word literally means, it was translated limited in 1 Corinthians 7, and enshroud in another place is the same word, sunstello. It means together put. Only 2 times this word was used. The other instance was in Acts 5, verses 1 through 6, speaking of a corpse. You know the story, Ananias and Sapphira. Ananias, they had embezzled, back in those days, the apostles, they were selling all their goods in order to get money together for the kingdom, which was near. And Ananias embezzled some of the money, and Peter was not very impressed, and he said, God has judged you, and he fell down dead. And the verse says that carrying him out, they enshroud him. Same, the Greek word here, they enshroud him, and carrying him out, they entomb him. They did this with Ananias. So I'm wondering, they enshroud, there's something in common with this enshroud and this word limited. I'm not interested in this shroud. I'm interested in how this era is limited. In what way is it limited? Well, this gave me a clue. I get a clue. I go to this word in Acts 5, and I see enshroud, and I'm thinking, the same word, different usage. So the Concordant is a rare instance where they had to use 2 different English words. But there's some common thread here between a shroud and limited. I thought about it for 2 minutes, and I got it. They had to carry this guy to the tomb. Now, can you imagine carrying a corpse, fresh corpse? Joints are still loose. He's flopping around. You put him in a wheelbarrow. I don't know. He's flopping around. He's unmanageable. You pick up his leg, put it over here, throw his arm up. You enshroud him to contain him. They have to wrap him up. Together put. That's the elements here. That's what made me see it, to put together, to tie up the loose ends. Go back to 1 Corinthians 7. God is tying up the loose ends. It's being limited. It's being constrained. We're tying things up into a package, and we're going to send it through the chute. He's tying up the loose ends. He's bringing things together for the climax of eon number 3. And we're living in it. The era is being enshrouded. I think that's kind of appropriate too, don't you? That the era is being enshrouded. This era is dead compared to the life that we're looking forward to in Christ in the oncoming eons. And so maybe I'm taking a literary liberty here to relate the death, the enshrouding, but I see this era as being just, we're wrapping things up and we're moving on. And here's the practical applications here. This will be a shock to some people. It's a shock to me. He's saying that those having wives may be as not having them. Those lamenting as not lamenting. Those rejoicing as not rejoicing. Those buying up as not retaining. Those using this world as not using it up. This is how people are supposed to act who come to this realization that the era is limited and that the fashion of this world, including Vogue magazine, is passing by. We're supposed to act this way. Those who have wives are supposed to act like they don't have them. What does this mean? Explain this to me. Some people are going, yeah, we got a loophole here? Dish me out a loophole. No, we don't have a loophole here, okay? This is what I think he means. For one thing, this is stunning news for a guy who just said in verse 27, you're bound to a wife, don't seek to be loosed. Is this ringing? Is this bothering people? Is it bothering somebody? Is it ringing? Is this ringing on me? Bong. Is it okay? Tell me. Okay, nobody's bothered. Okay, this is strange. He says, you're bound to a wife. What's going on with this? You're bound to a wife, don't seek to be loose. And now he's saying that the era is limited and those without wives should be acting like they don't have them. You know, relationships are binding. Now, I mean that in the best possible sense. But isn't there a struggle always between sons and fathers and daughters and sons and mothers and wives and husbands? Any relationship people are in, it's always tough. And I think Paul is saying here, I don't want you to leave your wife, I don't want you to abandon your children, but I really think he's saying here, lighten up. I think the key word here, all this thing is loosely. We're to hold things loosely. We're to be as though not having. Even though we're buying things, we not act as we're retaining them. I think that's the most graphic illustration here. Those who are buying as not retaining. Okay, we're not going to be freaks and go out and sell everything we have and go up to the mountain and wait for Jesus to come. No, people have tried that before. We don't know when he's going to come. But yet we know the era is limited, and this is present-day truth. And so we're not to leave our wives, but we're to lighten up. We're to lighten up on these relationships that drain us so much. And you know how the saying goes, you're owned by what you own. You don't own the things, they own you. And the more you own, the more they own you. And stuff just is so cluttered, but it's right here in front of your face, so you think it's this gigantic problem, and I got to get out of this, I got all these troubles. And Paul is telling us here, hey, the air is limited. It's over. The ship is sinking. We struck the iceberg. It's fatal. Oh no. No, that's good news. Look what's coming. Look what's coming now. My God, eye is not seen, ear is not heard. Unbelievable. This is coming, and that's what I want. And so I'm holding loosely to things that I have, and I recommend you do the same thing. And so that we need to renew our minds and focus on this real thing that's coming. It's more real than that nose wheel, that 747. Cut each other some slack. Lighten up. Because this big problem you're having, this huge, immediate thing you think is permanent, is passing by. Those lamenting, this is interesting too, those lamenting and rejoicing. Those lamenting as not lamenting, those rejoicing as not rejoicing. I instantly tied this into the birth and the death. You know, God's bringing all these people into the world, 120 million every year, and He's killing 2 people every second. When someone's born, you rejoice. We get so many polar opposite emotions going, and we rejoice. And when somebody dies, we're dragged down. I think Paul's saying here, let those rejoice be as not rejoicing, as not rejoicing. He doesn't say don't rejoice, he just says be as not rejoicing. That's hard to figure out, but the way I picture it is, take the edge off it a little bit. Don't get so freaky happy when somebody's born, and just don't get so down in the dumps when somebody dies. Just be more even about it. We don't need these roller coaster rides of emotions, because, I go back to this again and again, this current era, this era is limited and the fashion of this world is passing by. That's why. It's not for nothing. We don't just say don't do this. And I'm not saying, you know, when somebody's born, you send them a sympathy card. When somebody dies, you're glad to hear about your death in the family. It's just, I think you know what I'm saying. We're even. A little more even. And ready to jump ship. We need to be ready to jump ship. We need to be prepared. And I like the way Paul winds this up, really, in verse 32. Actually, it's the beginning of a new thought, but I'm going to stop with the next sentence that Paul does. Now I want you to be without worry. Yeah, me too, Paul. That makes 2 of us. Yeah, I want to be without worry. How do I do it? Like this. Like this. This is how you do it. Go to 1 Corinthians 7, 29, 31, and read it on your own tonight. Don't just read it as a Bible verse. Read it as something that's coming, that's actually going to happen. This is great advice when you're down. You know, it's great advice when somebody in your family's just died. You're always that way, you know, when things are going bad. Jesus, I don't know how many times I've said this to people. We're going through that. Jesus could come tomorrow, it'd be fine with me. This afternoon wouldn't be too soon. Jesus come. But then, let's say you have a thriving business and you're successful and you're making money hand over fist. LeBron James don't want the world to end tonight because, you know, he's in the NBA Finals. Hey, LeBron, Jesus come tonight. No, not tonight. We're playing the Spurs. You know, so when you're on a roll, but see, this applies to this too. I'm applying it to this too. Even in your rejoicing, reel it in a little, reel it in, even the rejoicing. Reel it in. If it has to do with this eon, if it has to do with money, or if it has to do with I'm successful, reel it in. Get a grip. It's no big deal. You're on the Titanic, okay? So you're the best chess player on the Titanic. Okay? It's sinking. This is where you want to be somebody. And God has chosen us to be the gods of the next eon. I speak literally. Small g's. But sitting at the right hand of God, above every sovereignty and authority, seated at the right hand of God. That's what's coming. And so my closing word to you is to anticipate in this life, in your minds, as much as you are able, anticipate this great thing that's coming. Because that is soon going to be the new fashion. And we're going to be on the cover of that magazine. Okay? We will take a 10-minute break now, and but not before I get your input. How's the temperature? Too hot? Raise your hand.